I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello and welcome to the show. I am very pleased to have back, I think for the third time, discussing a Sylvester Stallone vehicle. I've got Chris and Elle of Spoil My Movie. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having us.
New digs, new life. A lot's happened since the last time we spoke. We did Demolition Man, if I remember correctly, earlier in 2024.
Hell yeah.
And a lot's happened since then. So let's jump into that before we start talking about Stallone.
Okay. Since the last time we spoke, we moved, we got married, and we had a honeymoon. And we moved to video.
Yeah.
So
You
now
moved to video.
our podcast is audio and video.
I think if I remember correctly, you guys were on my second or third video episode for the Cultworthy with Demolition Man.
That's right.
Like it was like just barely starting into the video realm for me. And now I've been doing it for a year and it seems like such old hat, but literally a year ago, I didn't know what I was doing. I was like a monkey fucking a football. Like I had no idea if it looked good, where I should be looking at the camera, where I should put the camera, how to light myself. And look at us, we've grown.
We totally have. We have gone through similar growing pains, trying to figure it out in real time. And it's gone pretty well.
Yeah.
The learning curve went pretty quickly.
I mean, I thought back when you were doing it, that'll never be us.
Also, less police sirens and sounds of traffic in the city streets outside. So that's cool.
Yeah, we're still in the greater New York metro area. So police sirens do occasionally happen, but less frequently now.
More like fire sirens because it's been so dry out here.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's so good to have you back, and I reserve all Sylvester Stallone movies for you. So just to kind of recap the audience, we started off with Judge Dredd, 1995, which we had a lot of fun talking about that. We had different opinions of the movie. Some people liked it better than others. We both agreed that there was too much Rob Schneider.
Yep.
Yes.
Demolition Man followed, which was a great one because we had our now, I'm going to say, famous conversation at the end where we decided which quote from Demolition Man made the best punk band name. And that was a fun game too. And we all agreed that Demolition Man had the appropriate amount of Rob Schneider.
Yes.
Yes, agreed.
But now we go into like a new realm of Stallone. And it's funny because we're actually going backwards in time if we think chronologically. But there was a period, man, like in the late 80s to early mid 90s where I feel like Stallone got bored with what he was doing and decided to take leaps.
Okay.
Taking leaps in how he wanted to be presented on film, having a lot more say in like the creative process. And when we go back and we watch those movies, we can really see that he was very masturbatory in his Stallone-ness. And I think this movie is a perfect representation. But not only that, they gave him a partner. And we're talking about 1991's Tango N Cash. How did you guys feel about this movie?
I definitely felt like Stallone sort of steered away from his strengths, which was dramatic roles, deep roles where he would be vulnerable in most of his films, like Rocky, right? Like not the smartest guy, but a guy with a lot of heart, right? And a lot to fight for. And in this, he was the kind of guy that I can't imagine had friends and or relationships or, you know, met somebody at the bar after work. Like he was inaccessible. And for me, he was not the shining star of this movie.
I think he was kind of in a place where he should have been funny. And if you read like some of the lines on paper are objectively funny, but when spoken by Stallone, not so much. They fall pretty flat because it's him saying them. And I really think this is like a stop or my mom will shoot type of type of situation where he's not the right person for the job.
Yeah, it's funny too because this very same year he did the film Oscar, which I'm a big fan of, but he's totally against type in that one. And I guess it kind of works. They did it on purpose where he is playing like a comical gangster, a paternal figure. So I don't know, maybe like 91, 92, before he went back into action with Cliffhanger, he decided to stretch his comedic wings with this, with Oscar, and with Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. And the rumor is that the reason why he did it is because Schwarzenegger found so much success with Twins and Kindergarten Cop. Like, oh, the big, dumb muscle guy can be funny too. And Stallone's like, oh, I could be funny. And
Can you though?
He can't though. He's not built that way. And that's the thing is that some people are just actually natural comedy. Some people are just natural comedians, like Chris Hemsworth. Like they just didn't figure that out about him for so many movies. And when they did, then like you got much better movies, like Thor movies out of him, you know, well, not the last one, but like the Ragnarok? Yeah, that was a much better movie because they leaned into that comedic side. Stallone just doesn't have a funny bone.
Right. And I mean, Kurt Russell very much does.
Yes.
And so kind of like a Les Mis situation where one actor is way better than the other. And so the foiling doesn't work because it's so imbalanced. I feel like you've got that here between the two lead actors, that one is pulling it off and the other one not really.
Yeah, it felt like all of Stallone's lines laid incredibly flat, especially when they were trying to be funny.
I think Stallone was at his funniest when he was just being himself. Like in the first two Rocky films, he's funny when he's being punchy, right?
Yeah.
Like there's genuine laughs there. I think even though it's played for the drama, in Rocky 2, when he's doing the caveman commercial, I'm laughing my ass off. I think he's hilarious in that because he is kind of playing the real kind of dumbed down version of himself. Hey, I'm not punchy. I just have a relaxed brain. That's funny shit. But when he's going for the yucks, especially in those three movies that we just discussed, including this one, yeah, it's a weird thing. Like I said, like that late 80s to early 90s period is a very interesting time for him. And I'm so glad he did go back to action because it leads us into the films that we already discussed, kicking off with Cliffhanger, which in my opinion might be one of the best action films of the 90s. So
it holds up.
It does hold up. It's a part of like the growing process where I think sometimes some of the stars, their ego is so big, they think they can do everything. And then they learn, oh, I guess I can't, or maybe I just shouldn't.
Right.
Yeah, I think a big difference too between like the Rocky character and all of these other characters is the ability to laugh at oneself. And at this point, his ego is just too present. And he's trying, even outwardly, he's just dressed so immaculately that again, it doesn't feel like you're really getting to know him.
But that's real Stallone. Stallone is always like impeccably
he's sharp as a tack.
And, you know, that was like him.
Yeah.
And I think maybe Stallone as a person is not very funny.
Maybe, but like he just, he doesn't look like he's laughing at himself. All the jokes are directed out to everybody else being not good enough and like, you know, and sort of like trying to downsize them, right? So
sometimes
Rocky's funny because he's laughing at himself, you know, and we're laughing with him.
Yeah, Rocky's power is like the self-deprecation. You know, he knows everyone thinks he's a bum. He knows that everyone thinks he's got a relaxed brain. And by owning that, it also makes the relationship with Adrian work, because if it wasn't that way, it would be creepy as fuck, right? Like if he was like a sharp, well-spoken, educated dude and he's hanging out with Adrian, I'd be concerned. But it works because it's like, you know, the two unsharpened pencils found each other, essentially.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Aw, they're sweet though.
I love them though. I love them so much. Okay, so Tango and Cash, directed by Andrei Konchalovsky, who is actually kind of like a really good filmmaker. He was an auteur. The film that he's probably most known for in the States was Runaway Train with Jon Voight and Eric Roberts. It was a Cannon film, but it was like a prestige Cannon film. It even like made it to the Academy Awards. So it was an action, tight, suspenseful movie. And I guess because he made that, Stallone had this thing where he wanted talented directors to do his movies. But then every time he got a talented director to do it, he just ended up taking over. And he kind of created like this bad stigma for himself in the late 80s, early 90s, where it's like, okay, we got great directors, but Stallone is just going to direct himself. And so I think some directors are just like, okay, well, just give me my paycheck and I'll let him do whatever the fuck he wants. And there's a lot of that in this. So I was surprised when I did some of my research that Stallone actually liked what Andre was doing. It was the studio that didn't like what he was doing. They wanted more comedy and less action and drama, because it is kind of written as like a Lethal Weapon kind of thing, right? You've got two cops, both with different personalities, oil and water. And I think that is what the studio wanted, but the original script was a little bit darker. And at the end of the day, they fired that director.
I read that Cash was loosely based on Riggs.
That would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think the reason why, too, is Kurt Russell was the original choice for Martin Riggs, and he turned it down. And then Mel Gibson got the part. And so he saw how big Lethal Weapon was, because there was 2 sequels by the time this came out. And he's like, well, this will be my chance to have like a Martin Riggs role. But let's admit it, okay? I had it later down the list, but let's just talk about it right now. Cash is essentially Jack Burton. They're one and the same. He's bringing Jack Burton energy from Big Trouble in Little China to this film. They may as well be the same guy, in my opinion.
I could see that.
Yeah, for me,
they got the same hair.
The hair is identical, and I was like, it's strange though. For Kurt Russell, it really seems to work.
He's ridden that hairstyle way longer than anyone else should have.
Yeah,
most definitely.
Hey, when you find what works for you. For me, it's no hair.
Yeah. I feel like he's a compilation of a couple of those 80s action figures in this role. So for me, it felt very nostalgic in that sense.
I think nostalgia is the best way to put this movie, because I saw this in the theater with my parents. And my dad loved it, but my dad loved dumb action movies, right? We've talked about this, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
You're the Arnold Schwarzenegger's baby, essentially. So you're a part of that crowd too. But this one goes hard in the paint with like the dumb action. So dumb to the point where it's like, there's times in this movie, and I have nostalgia goggles for this movie, but on this rewatch, I was like, man, this movie doesn't really make a lot of sense.
No.
Like, it's kind of just all over the place, and it's basically saved by the charisma of Kurt Russell, in my opinion, because Stallone
absolutely
doesn't really do a lot.
No, you can't connect to anybody at all. And all of the lines, except for one delivered by Sylvester Stallone, was like, it was the only line I could connect to. And it's when it's towards the end when he's like, listen, Catherine doesn't need that 2 a.m. call. And that's why I'm overprotective of her. And it was the only moment that I was like, I feel the human behind the character now. But then another quip follows and it's lost. Right?
There was one quip that worked, and it was when Stallone said, Rambo is a pussy.
Right. It's like the first big line of the movie too.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I recognize this time is when we watch these buddy cop movies or these like, oil and water co-op movies, that one of the people involved is highly relatable and the other one's like the lone wolf, right? So they have different archetypes to them to make them interesting. But in this film, both of these guys are lone wolves.
Yeah.
And so they don't really have any attachments to anything on the outside. Now, Stallone is the overprotected brother of his sister, but that storyline is so thin.
It's murky too, because at first I was like, at the beginning we're watching and I'm like, is that his daughter or is that his
Or his
girlfriend?
girlfriend.
And then when it came out as sister, I was like really cringing because during that scene where she's giving the Cash the massage, she's
Right.
like orgasming and he's sitting there watching and he's going, oh God, no. But I'm like, if she's your sister, did you just like stand back and watch her have sex according to your point of
Right.
view?
You wouldn't have just busted in 3 minutes earlier before you even like heard the first moan of pleasure.
Yeah, I would have been like, nope, not for me.
It was pretty cringy.
Chris is right though, because there is a lot of stuff in this on this film that on paper that's funny. Like that scene to me on paper is funny where she's giving a massage and she's trying to put like his shoulder blade back in or something, but Stallone overhears it and he thinks that they're having sex. That is funny, but in delivery in the film, it's cringy because they hold on Stallone for like a minute while she's making these noises. And you're like, oh, wait, so this dude is just literally hanging out and listening to his sister have an orgasm. That's pretty fucking weird.
He's a voyeur in that moment.
The only way it could be worse is if he was audibly fapping.
We can make a fan edit of that, you know. That's what people do these days. Super easy. The plot, if we can call it that, is that Tango and Cash are like the two best cops, the lone wolf cops in Los Angeles. They work in different precincts. They have different styles where Tango is, like you said, he's the well-dressed, wears like the Oliver Peoples glasses, and he's like a day trader as well. Like he's trading stocks. They try to like build that he is like the real money guy. And then Cash is essentially the Martin Riggs, probably lives in a trailer. You know, he's got guns in the heels of his boots, which is pretty cool. As you do, as one does. There is a setup involved by Jack Palance, who is like the drug kingpin. And when I think of Los Angeles drug kingpin, I think of Jack Palance. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, totally on the money.
And then he also has like two like underbosses. He's got James Hong, again, Big Trouble in Little China. And then he's got this guy Lopez. And I guess one represents the cartel and the other one represents the triads. They don't really color that too well for us. All we know is that there's a lot of money involved and a lot at stake, and that Tango and Cash are ruining everything for them. So they set them up for a murder to get them into jail. And this is the part where it really kind of is, you got to really put the suspension of disbelief aside. The fact that the two best cops can get set up so easily by a drug kingpin who's going to pay off lawyers, pay off the police, pay off the system. These guys cop a plea deal, which if they were real cops, they would never do. They would never say, oh, okay, I did it if you give me less time. I was like, what the fuck is that?
No, where was the PBA in all this?
And also Tango is pretty rich with that house that he has. So he can afford a good lawyer.
He can buy his innocence.
Absolutely. And he's white. They're both white. They're likely to get off.
They're both white. They're both good looking. They're in the newspapers all the time. So I found that first part hard to believe. And then they're supposed to go to like the state prison, but instead they go to like a federal prison that no one knows they were sent to. And the whole plot is to have them killed in prison. And when you watch that scene, there's no way they should have gotten out of that.
No.
They literally had the entire general population of the prison out of their cells in the bowels of the prison, like no guards noticed, or all the guards were paid off. That's where the suspension of disbelief of like, okay.
But like everything with the prison requires you to either be ignorant or turn a blind eye.
Yeah.
Like Stallone is wearing a gold chain. Right. You don't get to keep wearing gold jewelry in prison.
And he's got like his Gucci glasses on. And also like even from the beginning of the movie, like what does he do in the first 5 minutes of the movie? He does this huge like gang bust, right? And like and finds all of these like all of this cocaine, right? In like a huge truck, and that's just not reality of like how these things work. And a lot of the people that are in prison are actually people that are carrying like this much marijuana on them.
Right.
So, and then I've been to several prisons in my life, work related, not personally, but like that scene where the fire is raining down from everywhere was just
like that's just
to
general
me.
population of every prison, right?
Yeah, I'm like, even back in the 80s, that's just an impossibility. Like nobody would go to work if that's what was happening.
That
all
prison
day
was
long.
worse than Chateau d'If from Count of Monte Cristo.
Right. Yeah, again, the movie is full of colorful imagery that is very, I'm gonna say like music video-ish.
Yeah.
Like Madonna would make a music video in a prison that's on fire. That's kind of
Right.
It brings me to one of my favorite henchmen, because I love this guy as a character actor, but what the hell is he doing with this accent? So we got Brian James, who's in this movie with like the worst Cockney accent I've ever heard. But the reason why he kept it, according to the research that I did, is because Stallone liked it. So like the director was like, hey, don't use that accent. It doesn't sound real. And Stallone's like, no, I love that accent. Keep using it.
Aww.
And he also wrote more scenes for the dude just so he could use that accent.
Whoa.
So he was originally only supposed to be like in the beginning of the setup, but then they keep throwing him in the movie, which totally makes sense now. I'm like, how does this fucking guy keep showing up?
Right.
Yeah, it's like the focus is on the wrong character.
Right. Like he is like a James Bond villain. He's got the slicked back hair, but he's got this terrible... I thought it was like bad Australian at first. I'm like, oh no, he is trying to do a Cockney accent.
It just comes out Australian.
Yeah,
It just comes out Australian. So yeah, so we got him. And Robert Zadar, you guys know who that guy is, right? He's the guy with the big jaw, the big face, who they take out at the beginning. He's Maniac Cop, if you've ever seen Maniac Cop.
Oh my God, Maniac Cop. Wow.
I've never seen it.
He's like the big prison heavy, but in retrospect, I would have much rather have seen him throughout the movie pop up, because I think he's a lot more interesting than Brian James is in this movie. That's not saying I don't like Brian James, but it's just like, why do they keep using this dude? Like, use the big scary dude with the face. Like, that face is worth $1 million in my opinion.
No, totally.
Actually, I'll be honest with you. I found none of the villains threatening, especially the Kingpin. And the most awkward thing was how he was like picking up these rats, and he looked very uncomfortable with them. Like he did not look like he was actually really comfortable handling them or being around them. And he's like, aren't they beautiful? And you're like, no.
Which is weird, because he brought them to his audition. He had rats in his briefcase for his audition, and he insisted on using them.
It's one of those things where it's like the 90s, because this is the year after City Slickers, right? So Jack Palance was just always known as like a B-movie Western guy. People had a lot of respect for him. He had a lot of clout in certain circles. But then to come out and do City Slickers and win an Oscar for it, that's when you start seeing him like pop up in some villain roles or some side characters for a few years. And this is one of those. This is riding his City Slickers success. And I'm not saying that he's a bad villain. It's just the villain itself is bad. I'm not going to blame him for the performance, because it's a Jack Palance performance. What do you expect? He's going to do what he does. But it's just a bad villain. Like Elle was right.
Yeah. And also he's around too much. And my opinion on villains is that like when they talk too much and they unveil too much and they're present, like they kind of get watered down or diluted, right? And he's like in that scene in the prison when all the henchmen are supposed to be kicking these guys' asses, right? Like he's there. And I'm like, doesn't he have bigger things to do?
Right.
Like, isn't he this big kingpin? Shouldn't he be like on other matters?
And he just keeps showing up like he's Droopy Dog. You expect every time you open a door, he's going to be there.
He's there. I do love in the prison scene where like the shit goes down and the guards come in, he just kind of like disappears into the vapor.
Yeah, very Batman in that moment.
I did like that. We got to talk about Terry Hatcher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've always had like this just, admiration and crush on Terry Hatcher my whole life. And it probably started with this movie, seeing it 11 years old for me and being like, who is that?
That makes
and
sense.
just following that train. Not the greatest actress.
No, I mean, like, I was a huge Lois and Clark fan. I absolutely adored her in that. And I would have a girl crush on her if I hadn't been crushing so hard on Dean Cain.
Fair.
But like, I just loved everything about her. And man, she came a long way acting wise from that movie to Lois and Clark, I thought.
Oh, totally.
And it could be also just like, hey, when you look into the background of this movie, you've essentially got three people in your ear. You've got Stallone, you've got the director, whichever director they had that day, because
they had four.
Four directors kept cycling through this thing. But then also this movie was produced by the notorious John Peters. If you guys don't know who he is the guy that produced Batman. He produced Wild Wild West. He would have been the producer of the Kevin Smith written Superman that was supposed to be directed by Tim Burton. And apparently he's a guy that just has like a lot of big ideas that don't make any sense. And he's just a kind of a power hungry guy. But then most recently, he's been kind of immortalized in the movie Licorice Pizza, where Bradley Cooper plays the younger version of him. So apparently Bradley Cooper's performance of him is not far off from reality, where he really was just this wacko guy. So if you are on this set and you've got Stallone and these directors and this guy in your ear, I bet it's really hard to find a consistency in performance because you're literally being told 10 different things, and that's how it feels.
All the things.
I definitely
that makes sense.
felt how this movie was disjointed. So when I heard that 4 different directors were on it, it felt that way, right? It felt
totally
like too many chefs in the kitchen, and I could feel like Terry Hatcher's. Sorry, sorry, like totally brain farted. Terry Hatcher's performance was like in and out. Like sometimes she sounded like a girl doing a school play, and then suddenly she would like ease in a little bit more into the lines and like be a little bit more human and somebody you could connect with, and then it would go back out, so it was like very inconsistent.
And then like 1 minute she's like strong-willed and tough and independent, but then the next minute she's like weak again and needs her brother. It's a really interesting thing. Like the character we meet at the beginning does not match when she's at the club doing her dance and kind of being like this tough talking, I'm going to figure this out type of person.
Right. And Stallone also had a lot of like contradictions in my opinion, because sometimes he would be such a rule follower and stickler, like during that, before the prison escape, right? He's like, no, I don't do that. I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to, and then at the beginning, it's the opposite. Like he's outside his jurisdiction and he's just like breaking all of these rules.
I'm going to shoot this truck now.
Right. And
with a
he's
38
like
special.
Right. And he's like, maybe because he didn't have the other guy balancing him out in that cowboy way, like he was the cowboy in that moment, but like it just seemed like suddenly he was just like inflexible.
But now I'm just imagining Terry Hatcher as a cowgirl.
It's not the worst image.
we could have had another dance number. I'd have been fine with that.
Right?
Can we talk about the opening scene for a second?
Yeah.
That opening scene, they're in the middle of the highway and it is a lonely highway, right?
Desolate.
This one truck is here and there's Stallone with his car. He takes out the tiniest little gun, right, to confront this incoming truck, right? And it's completely desolate at this point. But at the moment that the truck approaches, suddenly you have traffic and you have helicopters and the bad guy in the middle of nowhere
in a limo
now drives past the scene. And it just really set the tone for me for this movie of like, this is just not going to make any sense, is it?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because even as a kid, I was like, wait a second. So they're in the middle of nowhere, yet the drug kingpin and his 2 underbosses are just having a joyride in a limo. just to see their millions of dollars of cocaine being confiscated. Yeah, even as like an 11-year-old, I'm like,
Yeah. It looks like they're like 40 miles from the next exit.
Exactly.
You don't end up in this place accidentally.
No, like Vegas is like a good 200 miles away. It
Right.
just, it feels
Well, and
like
that's the funny
nowhere
part.
America.
Yeah, that's the funny part is because, you know, they're Los Angeles police officers, but the police force in this jurisdiction are like Alabama highway patrolmen. It's like, what are we doing here?
and most like small towns, areas like that, only have like one sheriff, maybe a deputy, and they're pretty much responsible for like half the state. So they don't have a helicopter or any of that kind of stuff.
And I doubt they're going to be like, this is my bus. This is my jurisdiction. I'm going to take on this cartel. No, like let the super cop handle it.
This was the FBI. So they have more resources, but even like a field office in the middle of nowhere is not going to have much.
No.
I think we're picking hairs here. I think we're trying to make logic out of the illogical. This is Tango and Cash we're talking about. The chemistry between Stallone and Kurt Russell. I mean, obviously Kurt Russell steals the show. I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
But I also think that Kurt Russell is doing his best not to overshine Stallone in certain scenes. Like, I really feel like he's trying to pull back, especially when they're having, if you can call it dialogue, like the shower scene. I think that he is kind of like pulling back, so there is a little bit more of a dynamic. Kurt Russell's really good at that, because most Kurt Russell movies are the Kurt Russell show, but then in the things like The Thing, where he is the main guy, yet he blends into the ensemble perfectly. He's really good at doing that. And I don't know, it's like, this must have been challenging for Stallone to play a shared bill with somebody for like really the first time since he was huge, because I don't know, it's like there is a thing with him where it's like, I think the ego is there, and instead of using performance to try and match Kurt Russell, he uses smugness. And that just makes him even more unlikable.
Yeah.
No, that's spot on. Mm-hmm. I mean, he definitely has the ego. The problem is that in this role, he doesn't have the chops to do what needs to be done with this role, which forces Kurt Russell, as you said, to pull back. And it's like if you had oil and water, like that's what they were going for. Maybe like acid and base. And what they had was like acid and milk.
He's trying to be too cool, and you know, his veneer is the most important thing, it seems, like how he's coming across, and it doesn't allow for them to really clash, you know, because the temperature just becomes lukewarm.
Yeah, now we're talking chemistry here.
Yeah. Which I'm really bad at, so I don't know if that made any sense.
I mean, if you were like my junior high school teacher, I would have thought you were brilliant. So it was well delivered.
Yay. Wait till we start talking about carboxyls.
I'm going to get to like to me, the craziest part of this movie, where things like really decided like take the 80s high octane leap. And that's when they get the super truck.
Yes.
Out of nowhere.
Oh my gosh.
That super truck deserved its own movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, or at least an extended music video.
Something like that. I mean, like a Knight Rider type thing. Like it should have had its own TV series. It makes no sense that out of nowhere they go to Michael J. Pollard, who is like the Q of this universe, who just makes stuff. He made Kurt Russell's little gun boots, and he's got a super truck with like a minigun on it. And like, oh yeah, just take my super truck to go rescue your sister.
Right. And the funny thing is, like, looking at this truck through the side, for me, it was the first time I ever saw a vehicle and saw a person's face on it. I was just like, how does this look like a person? Like, it looked like Wesley Snipes from Blade. Like, it had a haircut kind of design. It was the weirdest thing, and it was like a weird optical illusion, and I was just like, it looked like one of the characters from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
It looked like
right? Bebop.
It does, yeah. Now that you say it, like with the shades and everything.
Yes. Yeah. How did this vehicle have more personality than Tango?
Right.
100%. And where in the police budget does this vehicle fit? Like, what? Whose tax dollars are paying for this super truck? And if that is the case, that it belongs to the police force, why aren't we utilizing it more? Right.
Right. Well, and who did this Q guy work for? That was never really clear to me. Maybe I just missed it, but he was just like making shit and they were taking shit. But like, where were they taking it from?
Like, my assumption is that it was some kind of development or research facility to create things for the Los Angeles PD. Just kind of like in Batman, where Morgan Freeman makes a bunch of cool shit that no one ever uses until Batman needs it, right? It's essentially that. It's like, hey, I got this cool truck, but I mean, no one really wants to use it because it costs too much money, so you may as well take it. No one will notice until you blow up Los Angeles with it.
Right.
Exactly.
But they like dispose of it like it's a dirty sock or something. And then they don't like have any accountability for like paying this thing off or anything like that.
Like, they destroy
that's like a multi-million-dollar police vehicle.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they trade it in for a couple of like tractors, a couple of excavators.
And that whole scene was so nostalgic to me because I remember that monster truck era.
Right.
And how that was such a thing. And like there were always commercials, monster trucks.
Sunday.
And I was like, wow, that was such an 80s thing.
Grave digger.
Bigfoot. Yeah. Oh, dude, I do miss those days. Yeah. So, and then, you know, this final action scene, again, it makes absolutely no sense because when they're going after Jack Palance, who has the sister, they're in the hive of this drug kingpin. There's like literally only 4 dudes they have to take out to wipe this whole cartel out. It's James Hong, it's Lopez, it's Brian James with the accent, but then Stallone has to fight. Who the fuck is this guy? There's a dude with long hair that just shows up out of nowhere and has this intense fight with Stallone as if he's been a villain the whole time, but we don't know who this dude is. So I don't care when he gets taken out. Like, and then meanwhile, he's totally disposable because Cash has to fight Brian James, and of course the grenade has to come back into play. But there's no stakes in this. And at this point, shoot Terry Hatcher. I give a shit.
Wait, not Terry Hatcher.
But if he was a real villain, he would have shot Terry Hatcher hours ago.
Yeah.
Like, there was no reason to keep her alive.
And he wouldn't have like fought Tango and Cash hand to hand. Like that didn't make any sense. Just shoot everybody and run away.
Yeah, we were like, why are they doing hand-to-hand combat when they all have weapons here?
They all had guns. So it's like the honor of it.
It was bizarre.
Yeah, everybody knows the honor of drug cartels.
Right. Let's drop our weapons and handle this like men.
Nah.
Oh. And they had big guns too, right? It wasn't like they had handguns. They had like the biggest guns you could have.
Yep.
And then I don't know, the spoilers, the final conflict with Jack Palance in his little room of mirrors, because that's such a drug kingpin thing to have behind your office desk.
Right.
Well, it goes with cocaine.
Right. We're just doing cocaine off the mirror walls, right? And I don't know. I think there's supposed to be like some kind of connection to the fact where like they both say they want to take him alive. So I'm going to shoot him in the ankle. I'm going to shoot him in the arm. But then they both shoot him in the head. And they're like, oh, my aim was off. My sights were shifted. It's kind of a throwback to the beginning where he was like, oh, someone messed with my gun and the sight is shifted. I think they were trying to make a connection, but it doesn't work because we've long since forgotten that shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It wasn't consequential enough the first time it came around.
And then the movie ends with a high five.
Oh, it's so stupid. Like when they're all 3 in that ditch after the explosion has happened, then they're just kind of like, hey, do you want to go get ice cream after this? Like they have like the weirdest conversation as if though nothing has happened of significance, right? They didn't just blow up this entire facility. Like it's so cavalier.
So cavalier. Like again, like I think when I was young, it was just candy, right? It was fun and I liked it. But now watching it with a critical eye, which is not the way to watch this movie.
No.
I was like, holy shit, this didn't age well. So this is my question for you guys.
Okay.
Like, critics hated this movie, but you talk to people that are generally our age, and maybe they just haven't seen it in a while, but they're like, I fucking love Tango and Cash. Tango and Cash is great. And I have to ask them, like, is it?
Yeah.
Like, when's the last time you saw it?
I would posit that even with all of these myriad flaws, the sum is still greater than the sum of its parts. There's something here that works in a way, at least a little. Maybe it's the terrible music that's kind of awesomely terrible.
It's awesome.
Bad,
terrible.
but good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It's bad.
there's something about it, some little bit of magic, and it's probably Kurt Russell, that really makes this better than it should be when you just lay it out and write it all down.
I think for me, we've been revisiting old 80s movies that were just so classic, like Goonies and stuff. And back in the day, I would have sworn to you for many years that it was the best movie in the world. And then watching it now as an adult, not being a child anymore, not being super impressed, having watched a million movies, having been looking at things critically, I'm like, this is just a bad movie that doesn't make any sense. Like, it's still nostalgic and I still love the characters and there are good moments, but it's no doubt a bad movie.
I mean, I still have the DVD from 20 something years ago in the old cardboard snap case. Like, that's how old it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I can honestly tell you that I haven't watched it in probably 20 years.
Yeah.
I felt good that it was there. Like, there was a comfort knowing that, oh, I love that movie. It's on my shelf. If I ever want to watch it, I have it. And so then I watched it for the show and I was like, I should have just left it there because I was just way too young to understand how bad this movie really is.
Exactly.
But I agree with Chris. There is something comforting about it. It is like a cornbread, right? It's something that just is sweet. It's satisfying, even though I can't sustain myself on it.
Right. No,
Right.
that makes sense. It's like a potato. You can gain a lot of nutrition from a single potato if you eat the skin, but that doesn't mean that you want to just eat a potato. Like, nobody ever wants to eat a single potato.
By itself. No butter.
By itself. No cheese, no bacon.
Yeah.
Okay, so we all agree, I think, that what saves this movie is the cast.
Yeah.
And it's not even that they have great chemistry. We just like these people on their own. And even if it's a bad Stallone performance, which there's been plenty of those, I still like seeing Stallone on the screen.
Yeah.
Like, he's one of those people where it's like, okay, it's my Stallone fix. I'm good. Schwarzenegger's the same way.
Yeah.
You know, there's some shitty Schwarzenegger movies, but it's still a Schwarzenegger movie.
Right. Even bad pizza is pizza.
Yeah, exactly.
Be a bad pizza, yeah, right? So we had a homework.
Yes.
We were going to recast this film for the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and the current decade of the 2020s.
Yeah.
So if we were to remake these movies in all these decades, we each brought a list, and I have no idea who you guys cast. You have no idea who I cast. And we're going to see how these line up. And who knows, we might even have a winner or we might be tied. It's going to be a very interesting thing.
Just so you know, it was really hard for me to pick it out because I just wanted to be really funny about it. And I wanted to pick out people that were not physically fit. And so I really constrained myself to think of action heroes.
I kind of went the same way, but I also went with charm. So we're going to see where we go with this.
Yeah, I'm looking more for like dynamic. That the kind of dynamic that didn't really work most of the time between Stallone and Kurt Russell. I think I've got some magic here.
Okay, I think I got some magic too, because I kind of did the same thing. Okay. I was thinking of charm, I was thinking of dynamic between the two, and a lot of these people haven't worked together. So I would love to have seen them share a screen.
Okay.
I think that ladies should go first. So Elle.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So for my 90s pair up, I have Patrick Swayze and Eddie Murphy.
Okay, I like that. Patrick Swayze is Tango, Eddie Murphy is Cash.
Yeah, you know why? Because, Patrick Swayze is really good. He could really fit either mold, but he could be conservative, right? But he had such great chemistry with Whoopi Goldberg and Ghost that
True.
I think that he would have a similar type chemistry with Eddie Murphy.
You want to hear something funny? Patrick Swayze was the original choice for Cash, and he turned it down to do Roadhouse.
We just read that today. She had
Yeah.
already picked him.
I had already picked him, so
Yeah.
plus the
You should have been a
hair.
casting director.
So, am I going on to the next?
Let's do round robin.
Okay.
So 90s part 2, we got Chris.
Okay. So I've got William H. Macy and Joe Pesci. All right, Joe Pesci, not particularly action, but I was thinking of the punch from My Cousin Vinny, and kind of, you know, a little bit more rough and tumble with a gun from like Goodfellas. So, and William H. Macy really has not done any kind of action. I think the closest you could say is like Mystery Men.
Maybe, yeah. So who's who?
William H. Macy would be Tango.
Interesting. He'd be like very bureaucratic about it.
He would be, I think he would be a lot more of a rule follower. I could see him as a day trader.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of character moments that work in William H. Macy's favor.
I also want to hear him say Rambo is a pussy.
I was cracking up thinking of characters while I was making this list, and I had a visualization of Johnny Depp as Edward Scissorhands going down that cable.
Just all right. So for my 90s pick, I went charming. I cast 90s George Clooney as Tango and 90s Matthew McConaughey as Cash.
Okay.
But McConaughey would have to really pull in that all right Texas drawl to make it work.
Right.
Agreed.
And then just have Clooney just play his 90s self, you know.
Clooney is a solid pick for Tango.
Yeah.
But, I kind of thought so too.
Matthew McConaughey as himself is like probably perfect for Cash.
I agree.
Unhinged.
I have a feeling he's got gun boots as we speak, walking around Austin, Texas.
Exactly.
All right. Moving on to the 2000s. Elle, who do you got?
Okay. So I have Samuel Jackson as Cash and John Travolta as Tango.
Oh, I almost put Travolta as Tango for my 90s, but I stepped away from it.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this duo in Pulp Fiction. So I just thought of the hilarity of like Samuel Jackson, you know, breaking out the motherfuckers. Like,
yeah, I think that dynamic works. Like their chemistry between them we've seen it and it works.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, because like in my head, I almost see Travolta as a Cash character if he plays it all loopy like he does Vincent, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, I kind of want to see him in drag again.
I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, that would work.
So who did you got?
I've got Ryan Gosling as Tango and Heath Ledger as Cash.
Interesting. Young, dapper, handsome. I could definitely see Ryan Gosling do the Tango thing, especially that era Ryan Gosling. I feel now he's gotten a little bit more sloppy.
No, now it would work.
It wouldn't work. He'd be more of a Cash these days after like seeing The Fall Guy and Nice Guys.
Yeah.
He'd definitely be more of a Cash, but that era in particular, absolutely. I like that.
All right. How about you?
For mine, I literally just thought of like, if I was casting the B movie low budget version of the same film with very similar performances, I went Vin Diesel as Tango.
She almost did that.
But Vin Diesel doing the Stallone Tango thing with like trying to speak very very businesslike, you know?
Okay. All right.
I trade stocks.
But you have to go like 2 octaves lower.
I trade stocks. Family. And then this was like my super wild card out of nowhere casting for Cash. I put 2000s Skeet Ulrich as Cash.
Whoa.
Wow.
There was just something about
field.
them in like the 90s, early 2000s. I'm surprised they did not do a movie together. I feel like that could have been a dynamic that worked, you know? Skeet Ulrich could have almost been the Paul Walker in Fast and the Furious had it been just a few years earlier before he kind of like burned out a little bit. So I thought that might have been like a fun reimagining of this. And if like you use the same script and everything, just changing the cast.
Okay.
Moving on to the 2010s.
So this is where I thought about Vin Diesel because I have The Rock as Tango and I was having a hard time finding the cash. And I was like, but Vin Diesel's kind of slow. I don't know. So I actually matched him with Kevin Hart because I think that that's a relationship that works in movies. And, like trying to find somebody to match The Rock was difficult because he's so enormous. that scale's imbalanced anyway,
People do talk shit about that movie, but I did like that movie, The Rundown, that he did with what was that kid's name? Sean William Scott on American Pie. I thought they had a pretty good dynamic too, and I didn't think about that when I was doing this list, but now I'm thinking about that too. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like Kevin Hart, like you have to put a comedian with The Rock for it to make it work, right? You can't put another action dude with him.
No.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a really good one. I like that a lot. And the fact that Kevin Hart's like 4 feet tall.
Exactly.
But like his Joe Pesci reference earlier, you bring this little guy, tough guy to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just can't stand Kevin Hart.
I'm not saying I'm a fan of Kevin Hart, but there's something undeniable about that pair.
I agree. Yeah, I like them together. Okay, Chris.
All right. For 2010s, I've got Benedict Cumberbatch as Tango and Tom Hardy as Cash.
Okay, are they using their accents? Are they British?
Oh man.
Could you imagine? Same script, they're just for no reason whatsoever British dudes.
Well, it makes the other British guy stand out less.
Right. Or more.
Or more, yeah.
Right. But you could not get Tom Hardy to like do a real accent.
No. I think that would be fun.
That would be fun.
The action, I think, would be the biggest push for Benedict Cumberbatch, but I think Tom Hardy would nail Cash.
Yeah, I mean, Benedict is like kind of like an artist type, He's not really like, he's more of a lover than a fighter, I think. An intellect more than a lover, even.
Like when they finally let him be like a superhero, they gave him the guy that's like a wizard. He just uses magic. He doesn't do like a lot of hand-to-hand shit.
Exactly. Like he's not showing the abs.
Yeah,
no. Although
they even gave him a cape. Like wrap that shit up.
Something about him tells me that maybe like in 15, 20 years, I wouldn't be surprised if they pull like a Liam Neeson with that guy and all of a sudden turn him into like an old man action hero. Because I never thought I was going to see Liam Neeson be...
That's true.
The Taken, I'm now an action star guy. I'm like, no, you're the guy from Nell, right?
Yeah.
But stranger things have happened.
That's true.
Okay, so for my 2010s, I cast one of my favorite underrated actors of all 3 decades. I put Jason Statham as Tango, and I put Ryan Reynolds as Cash. And I know he's the bigger name, and he is a billionaire, but I would like to see the rapport between those two. I think it would work.
Interesting.
I definitely considered Jason. But
yeah, that was a possible for her.
He's a very respectable action figure. I just, he couldn't fit Cash. And that was also like one of the ones I was trying to pair with maybe The Rock. And I was just like, he's not too much of a wild card. He would be the Tango.
Well, because didn't they do that Hobbs and Shaw movie together? And apparently it was a disaster because they both had like crazy ego fits and stuff. So
exactly.
Yeah, some guys you just can't put together like that.
Right.
All right. So now we are into our current decade, the 2020s. Who do you got?
I have Chris Hemsworth as Cash and Gal Gadot as Tango.
Ooh, you sneaky girl, because I have something very similar.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I just thought, it would be 2020s, and now some of the women are taking on some of these roles, right? And these two are just so gorgeous to look at. This would definitely be worth a ticket just to watch 2 hours of beautiful faces.
Yeah, but you can't have those two in a movie and not have them fucking too, and that kind of
That's
ruins
true.
the
That's
dynamic.
an opportunity
Yeah,
wasted.
that massage scene would be really weird. Like would it be a girl? Would it be a guy? Like, I don't know, but I just, I thought of her, she'd be a good Tango.
No matter who it was, it'd be hot.
Yeah, it would be very hot though.
Be hot.
Depending. I mean, I don't know. But like she has she's so put together that I think that she would make a good Tango.
No, I like it. I like it a lot. Okay, what'd you bring, Chris?
So we made our lists independently of each other. And
Uh-huh.
I also decided on something similar for the 2020s because I've got Evangeline Lilly as Tango and Margot Robbie as Cash.
I'm loving this. I am loving this so much. Okay, that is great. Okay, and I love the idea of Margot Robbie for sure, because I like it when she plays a little bit dirty compared to when she plays classy.
Yeah.
Like her as Tanya Harding is fucking fantastic. Like that's the energy I would see her bring. Yeah.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
Okay, I love that. So yeah, I don't know what we were thinking. I mean, I know we're all progressive as fuck over here, but 2020s, I put Zoe Saldana as Tango and Jennifer Lawrence bringing the white trash as Cash.
Oh,
all right.
That's a good pick because she can do that role.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking like Winter's Bone style or the ex-wife in American Hustle, like that kind of energy to it.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like give her kind of like a shorter kind of like give her Kurt Russell's mullet. Hell, that would work too, right?
I think it would.
It's a character unto itself.
I think it would.
I'd see,
and we've both seen them do action, so we know they can handle the action.
It's
so
true.
yeah.
See, I wanted to do Zendaya, but I just can't see her as Tango.
She's too muted.
She could be Kiki. She could be Terry Hatcher's character.
Yes.
She could be Terry Hatcher's character. And she would dance the shit out of that number.
She would. Absolutely. Fantastic. I had a blast with this. I love our little games, and how about this? Like none of us copied each other. We all had like independent performers for all of these. I thought there was going to be crossover in at least one of them, and there wasn't.
No.
So that's really cool. And we did not discuss this at all. Like this was all independent, like you said. So yeah, I think we're fucking great at this.
We talked about our picks, but we made them independently of each other.
Yeah. Who do you think is the best matching?
Oh yeah. So I knew you were going to ask that.
What a pain in the
ass.
Okay,
I'll give you two. I think that the best matching, in my opinion, is my George Clooney, Matthew McConaughey. That's just my opinion. But the one I want to see the most is the William H. Macy and Joe Pesci. Like, I want that movie. Like, there's a difference between what I think is best and what I really want to see.
Right. No, I get it.
I really want to see the Edward Scissorhands scene with the...
Oh. Chris, do you have a pick of what your favorites are?
I think your 2020s pick with Zoe.
Zoe and Jennifer Lawrence.
I want to see that.
Yeah, I mean, Jennifer Lawrence has been kind of like out of the picture lately. I don't know. Mm-hmm. There was all that stuff that happened, during all the controversy of like the Me Too stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think she's been kept a little bit quiet. I would love to see her come back in a big way in a role that doesn't seem like a role that she would do. And something like that.
Surprising. Yeah. And I feel like redoing this movie, I actually read something that production was like squished down to like half the time they would typically have for a movie like this. So if they had a proper budget and one director and a not insane producer, and the right casting and the studio not interfering, like if you didn't have everything that was working against this movie from the start, I think it could really work. And I think that's a casting that does work. You
know how they keep rebooting classics, things that we really love? I think this is the perfect movie to reboot and do really well, because it's not great really as an original, and it has a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think when they remake movies that were already good and already had like a loyal fan base, it doesn't really do much. No. Like the Death Wish with Bruce Willis, we didn't need that.
No,
the original Death Wish is iconic.
Yeah,
but Tango and Cash is kind of a mixed bag, and the idea of it is fun, and I think there's enough of the old audience that would appreciate seeing something new, and then a whole generation that would be discovering it for the first time, and then to go back and watch the old one and be like, oh man, the new one's so much better. It's like, yeah, kind of.
But it's anathema to like putting money behind something. These producers and studios, they want to put money behind something that they think will do well, and their evidence that it's going to do well is that it did well before. When in fact, I think they would be better served by picking something that had a lot of potential, but the execution sucked.
Well, this was a fun conversation, as always, talking Stallone movies. So I can't thank the two of you enough for being here, watching this movie, maybe deconstructing it more than you really wanted to or anyone should. But I had fun. So thank you so much.
We had a blast,
It was like a trip down memory lane because I had fond memories of this movie, and it was interesting to see how much it didn't pan out on a rewatch, but also how much things worked in a way of not working. Like if you fail so hard that it becomes a success.
Yeah. Just like Demolition Man, I enjoyed our conversation so much more than I enjoyed the movie.
The movie.
No, that's a fantastic movie. I won't hear otherwise.
Awesome. Okay, so spoil my movie. I mean, we've been doing this now for like 3, almost 4 years. You guys are a little bit behind me, but we keep on trucking. So what do you guys have coming up on the show?
We are approaching 2025 with a whole ton of guests that we're now starting to schedule. And Antonio, you're going to be one of them.
Awesome.
Because we've just been kind of motoring through and guests have been on the back burner. And now we're like, okay, we need to get people on here. Right now we're in, when does this come out?
This will be like the first or second week of January.
Okay. So we'll be into that. We'll be done with our Christmas movies by then. So that's our big push. And then I think we want to do some more peck-offs that have been kind of on the back burner for a bit.
I miss those. Like, those are always my favorite episodes. You guys have a great show, but the Peck-Offs is so unique to this film podcast that we, this universe that we all live in. The Peck-Offs are like my favorite. I looked forward to those. So yeah, I'm glad you're bringing those back.
I appreciate that.
Yes.
So yeah, we'll be doing we have a long list of Peck-Offs that we just haven't done.
And if you have ideas, feel free.
Oh yeah, send them along.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I can't wait to be, I guess, on your show again. It's been, I think, almost 2 years since I was on your show. We did the Mad Max Fury Road episode. That was a while ago. You guys weren't doing video back then.
No, we weren't.
No. It's a whole new world.
Whole new world. Awesome. So, everyone, please subscribe, rate, review, like, 5 stars. Spoil My Movie, found on all audio platforms and YouTube now.
Yep, and video on Spotify as well as audio.
Absolutely. And then my show, of course, The Cultworthy. Give us a review. Let us know what you think. And let us know what you think about our casting choices. And we're both on social media, so if you have any other casting ideas, send them to us, either them or me, and maybe we'll have a follow-up and we'll see what people say about our choices.
Tag us both.
Tag us both. Absolutely. All right, guys, I will see you very soon, hopefully on your show. And everyone else, I will see you next week.